So welcome again to the Hidden Gems in Healthcare, Sports and Wellness. And the agenda for today's event can be seen on the screen. So I'm going to talk very shortly about the Career Center resources and services. And up next will be the University of Pacific MA in Health, Exercise, and Sports Science. Right after that, Loma Linda University's MPH in Nutrition. And then we have a couple of practicing professionals to share their career journey with you all. So the orientation, I'm guessing it's no surprise that the Career Center offers career counseling services. And since we are online, these services are virtual and you can schedule them through your HANDSHAKE account. And there are 30-minute appointments and we can help you with resumes, personal statements, mock interviews, graduate school planning, job and internship search, anything that you may need assistance with. We also have drop-in hours every Tuesday, Wednesdays, Thursdays. Of course, it's also virtually, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And those are only 15-minute appointments, so they are limited to resumes, cover letter critiques, and job and internship advice. Pre-health services or graduate school services, if you want to call it that, we do offer mock interviews either for job and internship search, or if your professional school or graduate school requires interviews, we can prepare you for that as well. We review personal statements and give you feedback. And also we have a whole list of workshops which you can view in your HANDSHAKE under events. That's always the most updated way to learn about all the things that's happening at the Career Center. We do have a career guide. If we would be on campus, you could actually pick one up. It's a printed booklet, but until then, you can download it as a PDF at the link below, and it has a lot of great information about career exploration, job and internship search, resumes, interviewing, and all sorts of other topics. So I'm sure you will find it very helpful, and I will put this link into your chat box as well. And then we also have some new online resources. We have a Pre-Health at UCLA website, a Pre-Health at UCLA Facebook page, and you can also sign up for a pre-health newsletter through your HANDSHAKE account. So if you choose healthcare as an industry preference on your HANDSHAKE account, you will receive the pre-health newsletter, and you will be able to hear about all the things that are happening at the Career Center and some opportunities that we come across during our work. Information sessions are a great way to engage with employers and recruiters. They are hosted virtually, and everything is in HANDSHAKE. So all the companies list their info sessions on HANDSHAKE. So please make sure that you check your HANDSHAKE account on a regular basis. MedMentor Mondays. So those of you who are still considering medical school, you can take advantage of MedMentor Mondays. These are a group of medical school students currently in their second year at David Geffen School of Medicine, and they host a wide variety of webinars for us on different topics. These are the 3 that are coming up most recently, and you can watch the recorded webinars at the Pre-Health at UCLA Facebook page. MCAT and GRE prep. So we are partnering with Princeton Review on this. So we do offer MCAT strategy session and GRE strategy session. These are already the fall quarter dates. We host them every single quarter. So if you miss it in fall, you can join us for winter or spring. And we do offer free online practice tests in both MCAT and GRE. The MCAT is not yet, the fall dates are not yet set, but we still have one GRE practice test coming up this Friday if you're interested. Online resources. So especially these days, it's very helpful to have information and resources at your fingertips. UCLA One is the online community of Bruins. alumni and current students can be found on this platform. It's very similar to LinkedIn. You can grow your professional network, find out about who's doing what. Many Bruins post jobs for other Bruins as well. So I strongly recommend to get familiar with that opportunity. We also have online workshops and tutorials that can be accessed either through our website or through your HANDSHAKE account on resume writing, career fair prep, and interviewing. And as we speak, we're working on some short videos on various topics, but those probably won't be uploaded probably until end of September or so. Other resources that you have access through your HANDSHAKE account is Focus 2, which is an assessment. So if you're still not quite sure what you want to do as your career, you may want to take the Focus 2 to see if the way you fill out questions about your interest, values, personality might help you figure out what careers might be a good match for you. Vault is a platform that you can do research on companies, industries, industry trends. They also have a great job and internship database, so you can use it for that. Going Global is for those of you who might be thinking of either studying abroad or working in a different part of the world or a part of the United States. You can research every region with the help of Going Global. Interview Stream, it's another platform that can help you practice interviews for interviewing skills. It has over 7,000 general and industry-specific interview questions in the system, and once you create your account, you can use it at your own convenience. You can record yourself, you can time yourself, you can try different questions, and hopefully you'll find this also very helpful when you're preparing for interviews. Alumni services. So some of you might be graduating this coming summer or even earlier. We do have services for alums. You can since we transitioned to HANDSHAKE, you after your graduation for 3 months, you have full access to the Career Center services. You can make appointments with us, you can attend fairs, networking events, recruitment events, and after the 3 months is up, you may want to consider purchasing access for a 6-month subscription to HANDSHAKE. It's only $30 in addition to your Alumni Association membership. And unfortunately, that will not allow you to make face-to-face appointments any longer, because at that point, the Alumni Association is taking over your care. But so please take advantage of the 3-month window after your graduation to connect with us and get all the help you need for the transition from college to work. Of course, we are all over the internet as everybody else these days. So we have Facebook page, both the UCLA Career Center Facebook page and the Pre-Health at UCLA Facebook page, YouTube channel, LinkedIn group, Twitter, Instagram, you name it, we are on it. If you have any questions, you can feel free to email me, or you can put questions in the chat if you want to. I'll be happy to answer that too. And now I'm going to run through a couple of slides just for you to know who's coming up next. So as I mentioned, University of the Pacific will be Courtney Jensen will be here to present on their MA in Health, Exercise and Sports Science program. And guest speakers for the program is Alexia Amo and Nathaniel Holmgren. They are both recent current students of the program. And after that, Loma Linda University's MPH in Nutrition, Celine Heskey will be here to talk about that program. And she will be joined by Raquel Martinez, who's a second year in that particular program. And then we're going to have QAs with practicing professionals, and Katie Wang and Aletta Mayorga will be joining us. And hopefully we'll have a great, great program. So I will stop my share right now. And before we get started, I want to make sure that I explain how this thing is going. I don't know if you guys had an opportunity to join us for other Hidden Gems programming, but the way it works is I will be managing the chat, and any questions that you have for me or about Career Center services or anything like that, please feel free to post in the chat. If you have any questions for any of our guest speakers or content presented by them, please make sure that you use your Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And we're going to get to your questions either during the presentation or at the end of the presentation. We'll say how that's going to work. And now, before we get started, I just want to poll the audience to kind of understand who's here. So can you please let us know what your academic standing is? All right, we are at 60%. Anyone else would like to share? 70, 80, can get to 90. All right, okay, so most of you are juniors, some seniors, freshmen, sophomore. Thank you for sharing. And all right, so okay, so now that we know more or less who's in the audience, Courtney, would you like to take it over?
Yes, let me share. All right, I assume everybody can see the screen, and I trust if nobody can see it, someone will unmute and shout at me.
I can see it.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to introduce, I'm Courtney Jensen. I'm this first one over here on the left. These are the 5 faculty at University of the Pacific. First off, I hope everyone's having smooth as can be introduction into the semester. I know it's a bizarre one. It seems to be a series of avatars greeting avatars, but my digital representation is glad for the opportunity to address yours. It's nice to see people across the spectrum from freshmen to seniors, mostly juniors it looks like in that planning stage, but planning happens at every single grade. I was a late planner. So I started and I was plowing through my college experience, and I had no idea what to do with my life right up until in my PhD. This is sort of where I decided to go into my PhD and knew what I wanted to do with my life at that point. This program, the Health and Exercise Science program at Pacific, I actually was a student here at Pacific for my master's. And I was just this indecisive, wayward student. I did well in my undergrad, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. At first, my initial assumption was that the job market was physical therapy, less focus on occupational therapy, but I had heard of it. Physician, and those typical careers. And then some of my friends rushed through programs fast, and I had a couple older friends who became physicians and hated their jobs. They realized that some of them loved their jobs, but many of them realized that being a doctor and doing doctoring are 2 totally different worlds. And this aspiration to become a doctor might not be the same thing as actually performing the job. And I went and shadowed some physical therapists. Wonderful profession. It just wasn't what I thought it was. I thought I was going to be, working with athletes when I was an undergrad. And while that exists, in most cases, that's not what you're doing. And so that didn't help me identify a career path. All it did was exclude a couple of career paths that I decided weren't compatible with my interests and my skills. And so I went to Pacific. I was told Pacific is the place for the wayward, right? I now say we, but at the time it was they. They'll accept students who don't have a clear idea of what they want to do in life and try to map that out while preparing them in that direction. I was one of them. I went on to do my PhD in Connecticut, University of Connecticut. And most people who do the master's program here, what I now do as one of the professors here, is prepare people for what they actually want to do in life. It's an easy question. All you have to think about is, what do you leap out of bed in the morning for? Most classes you take, you don't go to bed. It's not like, you're anxious to go to bed so you can get up early and do the thing tomorrow. Often people are like that way with a sport, but not often with an academic subject. And if you find that subject, that's probably the one you should pursue or be able to make a career out of it. So I'll get into that a little bit more about what we offer at Pacific. But for now, so this is me over here on the left. I'm Courtney. And I've been at Pacific since 2010 is when I got here. Graduated in 2010 with my PhD and came to Pacific before I graduated. Over here is Mark Van Ness. I'm going to get to everybody, but I'm going to start with Mark because Mark and we co-teach sometimes. And we do have a graduate class coming up next semester or the following, where it's a physiology course, and we're co-teaching it because we teach sort of opposing physiology. It doesn't sound like it because we have one body, but for those who have taken some bio and physio, Mark teaches cardiovascular physiology. His PhD is actually in neuroscience, but it was neural control over cardiovascular parameters, blood pressure, stuff like that. It was a lot of rat surgeries. And I teach muscle physiology and mostly what's happening inside of a muscle cell. But what's happening inside of a skeletal muscle cell sort of opposes what's happening inside for the cardiovascular system. So it's helpful when we co-teach or just to give students diverse exposures, where I'll say something like, if you've had these classes before, PKB or AKT, something like that is mTOR signaling. I'll say, the PKB, canonical signaling for hypertrophy, I'll say this is wonderful and AMPK is awful. Now, they'll go take Mark's class and Mark will say, you want to just as much AMPK on the march as you can possibly have, and let's dial back PKB, PI3K, let's dial back that stuff. We're saying the opposite thing, but both of us are consistent with the literature. It just depends on what your goals are. It depends on what you want your body to be doing. And so we set a context and then provide the physiology. And so it's nice to have that diverse physiology between Mark and me. Sharon West, right here between Mark and me, she started the athletic training program at Pacific, and she's mostly athletic training and American College of Sports Medicine, the exercise testing and prescription. A lot of exercise testing is what she teaches, and sort of the breadth of entering the field, working with patients and clients, and then over here, we have Peg Ciccolella. She does anatomy, functional anatomy, sort of kinesiology anatomy, origins, insertions, stuff like that. But also she's a lawyer. She has her law degree. And so she teaches this hybrid of law and exercise science, sports law, and health law. And then over here on the far right, he's much friendlier than his picture appears to be. Peter Wong, he is an athletic trainer, but he also has his MPH, so he's more public health. he works in rodeos. His athletic training contributions are in rodeos, and he does take athletic training students to the rodeos where they get the most fantastic, sort of interesting but devastating injuries. One balances empathy with awe in those situations. But he actually it looks like a mugshot. He's a lovely, hilarious guy. So these are the 5 faculty members that we have. And despite only having 5, the breadth of the education, we do manage to cover almost all bases. Biomechanics were a little bit limited. I teach it as a component to one of my classes. We have had people teach it before, but the biomechanics is a little bit limited. Other than data collection, we have some fantastic equipment for that. We were the first, I have a picture of it coming up, we were the first university in the world to get Proteus, which is a biomechanics, it's an analysis machine for the upper limbs. But so those are the faculty members. The students are really what make the department go. The students are so active, so involved. And we have a number of graduate assistant positions. So if you're familiar with those, you don't pay tuition, or it's tuition cut in half. So in our program, the first year, people are eligible. Anyone with a 3.0 or higher GPA is eligible for a half assistantship. During the second year, eligible for a full assistantship. So if you're good, if you demonstrate proficiency throughout your first year, by the time you graduate, you'll pay for 1 semester. This is actually me on the bike when I was a student here. And before we remodeled the building, when the program was sort of in its earlier stages, and the person testing me, Travis Stiles, we were students together. We were both of that indecisive class. He went to UC San Diego for his PhD, and you can look him up, Stiles. He was named by Johnson & Johnson as one of the top scientists under the age of 40 or something, a trailblazing scientist, something like that. He's figuring out ways of regrowing myelin. But everyone in this graduating class went on to do something different in health and exercise science. She actually went to acupuncture. She's the only student I know who went to acupuncture. But we'll talk about some of those other opportunities in just a second. Miguel Medrano down here in the bottom right is his email address. He's our administrative assistant, so you can get in touch with him if you have administrative questions, but I'll obviously be delighted to answer any questions if you want to send them my way. To find us online, we have a number of websites. The Instagram page is run by students. I pop in about once a month to see what's been posted, but these two I actually run. PacificLectures.com has all of the information about both the undergraduate and graduate programs at Pacific Lectures. It starts with an image of our building, and then there's a button for undergrad and a button for grad, and whatever people are looking into, all of the information about enrolling in the program itself are there. Pacific Paper Mill, there's a password for that one. It's sort of a, let's keep the riffraff out. 118 is the password. And that site is in need of a little bit of updating, but it is our publishing group of students, resources for them, opportunities for funding, announcements, our past publications and presentations are all there. So where our students go, I was hinting at this a minute ago. And again, we send a number of students to MD and DO programs, to physician assistant and physical therapy, occupational therapy. We do prepare people for the PharmD program, which we have right across the river on campus. It's a few hundred meters away, and nursing programs. We send students who graduate from our master's program to all of those. But what I consider more interesting is being the route I did of deciding those canonical jobs that everyone knows about weren't really fit for my interests. Wonderful careers, easy to find work once you graduate, high pay, great benefits, your job safety, that security, wonderful jobs, but it wasn't for me. And a lot of students who come to Pacific have a similar idea of what the job market is. They're just not compatible for that 2 or 3 job batch that they've been presented with in their undergrad. And so exercise physiology, that's the route that I went. But we do send students into just the job market with their master's degree in exercise physiology in the Bay Area. You know, it's a little bit east of us, an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, depending on traffic, a little bit east of us. Exercise physiology jobs exist on a sort of corporate level. And dietitian, nutrition. We'll wait for Loma Linda to talk about that, because we don't prepare people specifically for that. We usher them to their seats in that field while taking a couple of classes on the way. Drug rehab is an interesting one. I did a little bit of that as an administrator in my PhD of doing research on exercise as a mode of limiting recidivism, relapse, right? So if we can get addicted, drug addicted people to engage in exercise, however habitually or addictively in exercise, what effect does that have on their drug use behaviors and risk behaviors? And it's pretty encouraging. So we've actually done some research here, collaborating with what's called Treehouse. It's one of the exercise places. Community health. We have a lot of outreach for community health, both with the MPH and jobs in the Stockton community, about kind of getting people into exercise who might not otherwise do it, either patient populations or traditionally sedentary. Some research assistance, whether that's in school or out of school. Cardiac rehab. A lot of people will do that as a placeholder while they're looking for an identity, a career identity. We have, if you guys want to Google him, Thorin Bradley, Thoren Bradley. Some people just, they run with this concept of, I'm going to go through, he did his undergrad and master's with us, was a great student. I had him a couple of times in the master's program. And, but he sort of has taken this identity online, and we hired him in athletics. He works with strength and conditioning, but I think his living, actually, he's probably making more money off of Instagram than he does with his salary. We have some personal trainers at a higher level. We have one, she's an IFBB pro bodybuilder who started a website and personal training, kratosathletics.com. We have some people in corporate fitness, finding success there. Some coaches will come through and will help prepare them. Health administration, athletics marketing, we have some of those. We had one person who teamed up with us for music therapy, and we did a presentation at ACSM, digital presentation, and the publication of the abstract about music therapy and health and exercise science. And so he's a registered music therapist. I don't know enough about that industry. We collaborated with that one. And so and this isn't everything. This is just a glimpse, sort of a partial glance at the playing field of what the possible jobs are. But again, what you want to think about, whether you come to our school or anywhere, is what you want to do, not what you want to be. I want to be a doctor, I want to be a whatever. Like, okay, but you're going to be unhappy if you want to be something but not do the work it entails. And so figuring out, the job market is so abundant, you just have to figure out what is most compatible with your interests. While en route, we try to get students to publish and present on the way to deciding what they want to do in life. And so this over here at the bottom left, this is Proteus. It's a handle, you just move around and it quantifies everything down to like 2 microns. I mean, it's like smaller than a human hair, those movements, and you look at acceleration and braking, and in serial repetitions, what the range of motion looked like in a 3D path. And so we do publish a fair amount on with Proteus and biomechanics. But so these students, Haley, she's now at UC Davis MD program. Iffy is in administration. I think she's like the highest paid person out of the lot. So she's health administration. Oh, Jessica is now in a DPT program. Alexis is doing a PhD in renal function. And Vunchi is doing her PA, and Angie is doing her DPT. So everyone goes on to something. Some people go straight into the workforce, but everyone goes on to something. Our goal is to find passion and help pave that road, just get rid of some of the potholes, make it a little bit, broaden the street a little bit, and to escort them into that job. And publishing and presenting are one way of doing that. So this is just a number of, in 2020, some of the ACSM presentations that we had, and a lot of different subjects, right? So this one's on fibromyalgia patients. This one is diurnal sensitivity of throughout the day, what do performance patterns look like in, this is the Maria Costa, this is the IFBB Pro with the Kratos Athletics website. So, but this one is on biomechanics throughout the day. Is it 7 a.m., 2 p.m.? When are you performing best? This is about audience participation and what that does to peak performance. Some psychological studies. Sometimes we team up with psych department. Retention. So again, this is another psychology that we've teamed up. Shabs, she goes by, was a student for both us and psychology, and she was collaborating that way. Oh, I mean, we have, body composition studies and parent-child programs and kidney function down here. This is, Alexis is the one now doing her PhD in renal physiology and more biomechanics. This is a fascinating one for basketball for people interested in athletics and what some auxiliary jobs might look like in athletics let's look at practice schedules in athletics and see how it compromises play. And so we did some logistic regressions to see win or lose, what are the odds and what do practices look like, and holding everything constant. And let's look over years of play. And if the teams are practicing within 24 hours of competitive play, holding everything, every potential confounder constant, you're going to do worse, right? Don't practice ahead of time. We had some Lyme disease studies, stuff like that. So the breadth of the program that's just where we're just this umbrella that tries to keep the rain off of everybody and allow you to kind of squint your focus on what career path you want with a little bit less obstruction and a little bit more guidance. And then one last thing I'll talk about is we do take students not currently because COVID limitations and nobody's getting on a plane at the moment, but for a few years in a row, we took students every summer to Uganda, to Kampala, Uganda, so sort of on the east, equatorial Africa, and they work with the Uganda Bureau of Statistics, UBAS, and it's the Census Bureau in the U.S. is if you dig into it, they're not doing a good job with reliability of the data. Everybody at what's called the Statistics House, if you see it, there's not a lot of creativity in the naming of things. Teacher's House, that's school, right? If like Chicken House is going to be some sort of chicken butchery. Statistics House, that's where they crunch all of the national data. And it's compelling data. We've published on it before, and so some of the students, every student, Carlos, this was the very first year we went. A few more students here. This is a friend of mine and the director of the School of International Studies, Bill Heron at University of the Pacific. So there's so much collaboration, even if we don't have it in-house, if it's psychology, right? If it is international studies or politics, and you want to do health, socio-political job and health, we start collaborating. And so we take all these health and exercise science students to Uganda to have them work with the team, where every single person who works there has at least a master's degree in statistics. Really bright people at the Statistics House at UBAS. And this is the last slide, and we'll turn it over to questions. But this is Bill and me, and we're in Uganda, and we stumbled. I don't know if you guys can look at your screens with enough resolution and squinting and brightness, but we were at the equator, and we just sort of went on vacation one day while we were there. We accompany the students and stay for almost the whole time, and the students end up staying for about 6 weeks while they do an internship there. But and I stayed once for about a month, and other than that, I stayed for 2 weeks or something. But this is a University of the Pacific sticker. We didn't put it there. We discovered right at the equator. I mean, the equator is 100 feet away from us. A University of the Pacific tag in Uganda. So So there is a wide reach, and I don't know how wide it is. It's a spotty wide reach, but especially for our job placement and job identity, that's what we try to do with students, with mostly the indecisive students. And I was, if you're among that class, I was one of you. Okay,
Well, thank you so much, Courtney, for the presentation. There are no questions yet, but what we're gonna do is I'm gonna ask Celine to go through her presentation, and while we're waiting for questions, so students, please, if you have any questions for Courtney, and please don't forget that we have 2 of his students. Lexi, do you guys want to introduce yourself briefly so people can see you? Nate, Lexi. All right. So in 2 sentences, what year are you, and what are your what was your undergrad, and what are you planning for the future? Lexi, you want to start?
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Alexia, or you could call me Lexi. I actually received my undergraduate degree at the University of the Pacific in health and exercise science, and I decided to earn my master's degree also at the University of the Pacific. I chose this because I love the materials being taught, and I know in my career this is a field that I want to work in. I'm like many of you, where at first I knew I wanted to go in this direction, and I'm still trying to figure out where I fit best in, but I'm very positive, and a lot of things look fascinating to me. I just got to figure out what I'm most passionate about. And what I do at the university is I'm one of the graduate assistants, and my job is to help students with research. So I introduce research, kind of how you do it with data collection, and prepare them in hopes of getting published, and then furthering that into preparing them for their manuscripts. So that's kind of like what I do. So I've been working a lot with Courtney as an undergrad, and now I help all of the undergraduate students with research.
Thank you so much, Nate.
I'm Nathaniel. Nice to meet everybody. Welcome. I, like Lexi, I came to UOP for my undergrad as well. I'm pursuing physical therapy, but this was kind of the right choice for me for taking 2 years to continue to develop within our department. We have a phenomenal department. I don't think I've heard anybody in the department talk bad about it. We just have staff that care and really put us in the best position to succeed. I have 11 publications from my undergrad before going into my master's. So, I mean, and that's because of Professor Jensen there, giving us opportunities young and then kind of developing us throughout our career.
Thank you so much. And now we're going to Now we're going to transition into Celine's presentation, but please, students, start thinking about your questions for Nathaniel, Lexi, and Courtney. So we have, because we have them here, and you can find out about the program. So so Celine is sharing screen. Awesome. All right, take it away.
All right. That took a second. So I'm currently the program director of the MPH Nutrition Program, School of Public Health at Loma Linda University, and this is going to be a bit of a fire hydrant moment, but I'm going to go over some information that I think will be important in terms of you making a decision in terms of whether or not this would be the right program for you. So RED is the premier food and nutrition experts in the United States. And one of the primary responsibilities of the registered dietitian nutritionists, or RDNs, as I'll refer them to them, as they are involved in assessing individuals, groups, and populations in order to identify nutrition problems and diagnoses, or to assess the risk for a problem or diagnosis related to nutrition. And then they apply an intervention that could be used to treat or prevent the nutrition problem. So the eligibility criteria to become an RDN is pretty specific. And one must complete what is called an ASCEND accredited program, and that's the Accreditation Council for Education in Nutrition and Dietetics. Currently, the minimum requirement in terms of a degree is a bachelor's degree, but starting in 2024, individuals will need a master's degree at minimum in order to become a registered dietitian nutritionist. In addition to a degree, you also need 1,200 hours of supervised practice, and you also have to pass a credentialing exam. So I'm just going to briefly illustrate some of the common pathways to becoming a registered dietitian nutritionist, because I think this is usually one of the areas that is most confusing for a lot of prospective students. And so on the left-hand side of the screen, this is the pathway that most students take typically to become registered dietitians or nutritionists. And basically with this pathway, they get a bachelor's from an ASCEND accredited program. And then they either apply for a dietetic internship, which is a nationwide match internship application, which is very competitive. Or the other option that they could have is to apply to a graduate program, one of those being a coordinated program that includes the supervised practice and the courses within the whole program. So once they finish either the internship or they graduate from the coordinated program, they're eligible to take the exam. Once they pass, they'll be qualified. Another pathway, which might be more relevant to most of the individuals here, is if you have a bachelor's degree, but it's not in nutrition, or it's a nutrition degree, but it's not from an accredited program, then what you would need to do is make sure you complete the prerequisites for whichever graduate program you're applying to. Apply to that program, complete the program successfully, then you'll be able to take the exam and become a qualified RDN. So at Loma Linda University, we actually have an ASCEND accredited coordinated program in nutrition and dietetics. And the program track that I'm the director of is the MPH nutrition program. The area of focus of this program is public health nutrition, or what some may refer to as community nutrition. And most of the individuals seeking this pathway are hoping to work long-term in public health or with underserved communities and populations. 1 quarter in length, which is very intensive because that includes both classes and the 1,200 hours of supervised practice. And the students do have the option to take the program part-time, the classes part-time if needed, but the supervised practice portion is full-time. Once individuals graduate from our program, they're eligible to take the RDN exam, so they're not having to apply separately for an internship program. So the admission requirements for our program include a bachelor's degree, as I mentioned before, for that second pathway. A cumulative GPA, so that includes any classes that you took in your undergrad degree or outside of your undergrad degree. So that should be a 3.0 on a 4.0 scale or higher. We typically require a GRE exam, but currently that is waived due to pandemic restrictions. So follow up with us specifically if you have questions about that. And then the specific prerequisites include general and organic chemistry, microbiology, anatomy and physiology, and human nutrition. In order to have a strong application, one of the things we recommend is that you ask your professors and or employer for references. You can also ask individuals that you may have done some volunteering with or an internship to provide information on your intellectual abilities, your ability to work with other individuals, your professionalism, and so on. Lastly, we assess how students are able to articulate their interest in public health and nutrition, and this can be done in your essay and also during the interview into our program. We do not require work experience or volunteer hours prior to starting our program, but both of those activities could be used to demonstrate your interest in nutrition and or public health. So for instance, many applicants will volunteer with the nutrition department prior to applying for a program, even if they don't have a background in nutrition. So this is a list of the current nutrition faculty in the School of Public Health, and their areas of expertise and research span various areas in nutrition, and this includes things like public health, nutrition, clinical. They also are involved in studies having to do with human intervention studies, specifically mainly looking at plant-based foods and the impact on health. There's also research that's done in terms of epidemiology, biochemistry, and also sustainability and environmental nutrition. So briefly, public health is one of those areas that can be really difficult to define, and a lot of people don't really understand what it is. So I wanted to at least provide a definition of what public health nutrition is and how this would differ from what a lot of people think of when they think of like dietitians in general. But I wanted to provide the definition from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is the professional group for dietitians in the US. And they say that public health nutrition is the application of nutrition and public health principles to design programs, systems, policies, and environments that aims to improve the optimal health of populations and targeted groups. Community nutrition encompasses individual and interpersonal level interventions that create changes in knowledge, attitudes, behavior, and health outcomes among individuals, families, or small targeted groups within a community setting. So simply put, public health nutritionists spend a substantial portion of their time working with various partners and entities to develop programs and policies that increase public knowledge of healthy eating practices, for instance. Also, they influence the attitudes and inspire behavior change for overall better health. They also help to change the environment so that people can make better choices. We hope to make those choices easier to make in general. So an example of that would be a healthy vending policy that's developed by RDN that encourages organizations to stock healthy food options in vending machines for employees. So public health nutritionists work with both individuals and groups to help them improve their nutrition status and health. This slide sort of summarizes some of the entities. This is not an exhaustive list, but it's just to give you an illustration of some of the areas that you could work in having the MPH degree along with the RDN credential. And so public health nutritionists may work for the government at different levels. So for instance, the county public health departments have dietitians who conduct nutrition assessments and also provide education and counseling to individuals and groups that reside within the county. And some of this work involves providing nutrition expertise, technical support, and skills to various public health nutrition programs. So an example of that would be like the senior nutrition programs. Another example would be the school lunch program, which on the surface may not seem like an obvious public health nutrition area, but actually they do partner with the dietitians who work in those areas to help with some of the policy and advocacy around improving access to healthy food for children. Public health nutritionists often work in a supervisory capacity, which may or may not include direct interactions with the public. And in this case, they may be delegating tasks to subordinate RDNs and other staff who support public health nutrition efforts in the state or county. And then we also have public health nutritionists who help to influence and develop policy. And this includes laws and various guidelines that either mandate or encourage healthy behaviors. In addition to what I've described, our program prepares students for all entry-level positions in the field of nutrition and dietetics. So some of our alumni also work in school or hospital food service. They also may work in hospitals as clinical dietitians. They may also work in research and also private practice. in general, there are many industries within which RDNs can work. So I was just going to provide a few illustrations of public health nutrition in action, because often I feel like public health nutrition is kind of hidden. We're not always aware of some of the impacts that these individuals have. So in partnership with this public, some of the public health nutritionists work with them to advocate for a law to be passed. And this law was passed in 2018 and went into effect in January of 2019. And this law makes water or milk the default drink choice for kids' meals at restaurants in California. And hopefully this law can have a significant impact in reducing the intake of sugar-sweetened beverages in that population, which we know are associated with poor. It involves one of the faculty members within our school, Dr. Sabate, and he was invited to be on the committee that is drafting the 2020 to 2025 dietary guidelines for Americans. This is kind of a big deal in the sense that this is the official nutrition policy document of the federal government in the United States. And this document is used to inform public health nutrition education that is provided at the national and the local level. So if you've heard of My Plate is basically developed based on the guidelines that are put into this policy document. And in terms of what Dr. Sabate does in our campus, he's one of our professors mainly focusing on vegetarian diets. So some of the research that he does has to do with vegetarian diets and plant-based diets and foods and the impacts that those have on health outcomes. So one of the things to be aware of when it comes to our university, we are a private university that is part of a religious institution. All are welcome to apply to our program as long as they agree to respect our philosophy, mission, and values. So students are required to attend chapel once a week, and they also have ethics course for our students, along with abstaining from using alcohol, tobacco, and illegal drugs while they're students in the program. So one of the concepts you always hear when it comes to Loma Linda University is to make man whole and whole person care. So care is not just about, looking at the medical reason why an individual is sick and providing medication, so to speak. We're looking at the overall, all the aspects that are important for an individual's health when it comes to the philosophy that we have for providing health care, either to individuals or populations. So the first year in the program, you'll be taking courses in public health to increase your competence in that area. You'll also be taking courses in nutrition science and nutrition assessment, medical nutrition therapy, and vegetarian nutrition. And in the second year of the program, you'll be taking classes on nutrition counseling and education for individuals and communities. You'll also be taking various food classes that include things like experimental foods, food chemistry, food service management, public health nutrition, nutrition policy, research-related classes, and a religion class. And the picture in the background here is actually of our hospital that is on our campus. They're currently building this building. It pretty much looks like this at this point. They should be moving patients in there probably later this year. But we have quite a big healthcare system on our campus. And a lot of the programs that are offered at our university include things like dentistry, nursing, medicine, and so on, in addition to public health. So our students usually are able to go into the hospital here, even for some of their medical nutrition therapy classes, which is not something that's necessarily common in other programs. So in terms of supervised practice, I'll just quickly go over these. You have a food service rotation that has 200 hours either in a hospital or school. Then you have 400 hours of a clinical rotation that's usually in a hospital. And you also have 400 hours of a public health practicum. So you actually get more hours in public health than most students do in other dietetic programs. And so some of the places that students may be able to do their rotation include the Departments of Public Health within the county, various food and nutrition programs like WIC, for instance, or even the school food service program, specifically focusing on healthy eating, nutrition education, and so on. And also nonprofits, private organizations that work within our community are also some of the locations students can do their rotations in. In terms of cost, I know this is always a concern for prospective students to our program, especially considering we are a private school. So this information is available on the program website. So you can go to publichealth.lou.edu and look for the MPH nutrition program. And on that program website, I give a breakdown of the cost and also links to things like housing and so on. And then we do encourage students to get involved, including by volunteering, which we actually require. And we also have clubs on campus, some of which are nutrition-specific clubs, like the Nutrition Council Students Association and the Phi Upsilon Omicron Honor Society for Nutrition Students. We also have a garden club, School Public Health Students Association, and there are other clubs on campus. And these provide really good opportunities for leadership and volunteering, and also in some cases provide opportunities for students to apply for scholarships. So that's it. I'm gonna stop sharing at this point.
Thank you so much, Celine, for sharing all that information. And I would like to invite all the professionals, all the graduate students to turn on their cameras and sound so we can see all of you. And of course, Courtney and Celine will also be here. But now I would like to have everybody else who didn't have a chance yet to introduce themselves. So Aletta, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi. Thank you for having me here. So my name is Aletta Mayorga. I'm a registered dietitian with a master's degree in nutrition, which I actually obtained at Loma Linda University, not through the MPH program, but through the Allied Health program, which runs similarly to the MPH program, but I'm not going to go into detail on that. So I graduated from that program in 2014. Obtained my registered dietitian license and have been practicing since then. I started in the clinical world and was a clinical nutrition manager over at part of Cedars-Sinai Hospital. And then a couple of years ago, I kind of found my calling in something that was a little bit more science-oriented that I've always loved to do. And I'm now the research and development manager over at Smarty Pants Vitamins, where I am really the go-to nutrition person for the company and help design formulas and supplements and do a lot of the research and substantiation that goes into our formulas. So did a little bit of everything. I also have a certification in critical care nutrition support, and I absolutely love that field as well. So if anyone has any questions on different alternative paths the dietitian can take, I can certainly help with that, because I think I have a good mix of having started off in a very traditional sense as a dietitian. I also worked a little bit alongside in a private practice with eating disordered clients, but mostly I think the consumer goods industry and the role of a dietitian in this industry is really where I want it to be, and that's where I'm at now. So it's been a really interesting journey, but certainly it just goes to show that because nutrition is such a vital component to our lives, and it's such a foundational knowledge base that you can really take it wherever you want it to. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. Raquel, would you like to go next?
Sure, thank you. My name is Raquel Martinez. I attended California Baptist University for my undergraduate education and received a bachelor's degree of science in nutrition and food sciences in 2018. I'm currently in my second year as a student of the Loma Linda Masters of Public Health program, and I will be completing the program by the end of this December. After graduating, I plan to take the Commission on Dietetics registration examination for the RD credential, and I would really like to focus on public health nutrition, particularly in the form of implementing nutrition education programs, as I really do believe that nutrition knowledge is one of the first steps to help empower individuals and communities. And overall, I think my experiences at Loma Linda University really helped spark my interest in serving people through education and collaborating with them to simply enjoy life and modify their choices to include healthier options.
Thank you. Katie, you're up next.
Sorry, looks like I was muted. Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Katie Wang, and I am also an alumni of the Loma Linda University Masters of Public Health and Nutrition program. I actually just completed it last September and then became a dietitian in November. So I am a new dietitian, which is super exciting. And that's kind of why I chose Loma Linda, was because of their really emphasis in public health and community nutrition. And I actually work as my title is clinical dietitian, but I'm actually an outpatient dietitian for the Veterans Administration for Loma Linda. And so I do work for the VA, which is really interesting as a first job. I do cover about 17,000 veterans, which is really intense. And they're a really interesting but fun population, actually. And I think this kind of work is exactly why I came into nutrition. And, you know, it's a real privilege to serve our vets the way they served our country. So I am new, so definitely feel free if you have any questions. I'm still very familiar with the program.
Thank you, everybody, for introducing yourselves. And until we wait for questions from students, I have a couple of my own. So usually when I counsel students, the very first question in any career exploration appointment is that, how do I make sure that this is the right path for me? So we have graduate students, we have young professionals. So how did you make sure that this is the right field to be in? Anyone?
I can speak to that a little bit, only because that's exactly where I was many years ago. I actually got my bachelor's degree in economics over at the London School of Economics, and worked in investment banking for a few years. And so I found out what I wanted to do and what the true calling for me in graduate school was by working somewhere that I wasn't supposed to be. I'm not advising anyone to do that, but I would say that I think after completing a bachelor's program, really having a hands-on look on what industries you think you might want to go into, and then having either practical experience working in those fields, or speaking to people who are working on those fields, to really make sure that ultimately you want to make sure that once you graduate, that field will be somewhere that you will be happy, that you'll be fulfilled, and you'll be really interacting and working with people and topics that you want to spend most of your adult life doing. So for me, thankfully I was able to pivot after several years in investment banking and go back, and thankfully Loma Linda does have a really great program for people with a different type of background to transition into completing prerequisites and being able to obtain a graduate degree in the field of nutrition. But I think it's important to have that interaction with practicing professionals, and then also recognize that you may then want to have the ability to pivot if need be. If that's remaining flexible throughout your first few years of working somewhere, it doesn't mean that the rest of your career is destined to be in that field. There are always, a wide range of opportunities out there that you can travel to. You just have to remain flexible and open-minded about those opportunities. So yeah, that's sort of my main advice on that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I think Aletta, you're 100% right. It's definitely just reaching out and exploring, using your undergrad, using your undergrad to explore what you want to pursue. Something that's not going to bore you, something that's going to be entertaining. I kind of decided when I was younger that physical therapy was my passion. I'm going to end up there, as much as Professor Jensen wants me to do otherwise and go my PhD route. But I decided, you know, I can take a step away from going right into that and utilize, you know, my young age and go into the master's program and really kind of expand on the knowledge, use the knowledge that you can gain while you can gain it. Once you get into a career, then it's kind of going to be, okay, learning a little here and there, but kind of sticking with the same thing. So utilize your education. Once you kind of go into the job workforce, you need to have some background to compete. And I think, I mean, our program helps me compete when I'm going to go into physical therapy. So.
Thank you. The other major question that I get from students is, okay, once they discovered what they might want to do, how do I find my programs? When I'm looking for a program, what are some of the criteria that they should consider to make sure that they are at the right program and right school?
I'll speak on behalf of this question. I think one of the most important factors to look at is the staff and what they teach. And that's something I looked into with the master's program. And although I had an advantage and I knew the staff and faculty, other students may not have gone through our undergraduate program. So getting to know them, I think, is a great way to see if that's a place for you, and if the materials taught is something that genuinely interests you, like it did for me. And, you know, with Dr. Courtney Jensen, he had really helped me along the way and inspired me. So if your faculty doesn't excite you and make you happy in the program, I think that's a key factor in it. But definitely Dr. Jensen, Dr. Vanessa, they've definitely done that for me, and I can say for other students. So just find a place where it interests you, you really connect to the faculty, and it's something you love, something you wake up and you're like, yeah, I want to go to class. As weird as that sounds.
Anyone else? Raquel, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of nutrition, one of the main factors to look at, especially if you want to go into becoming a registered dietitian, is to look for those accredited programs. And that's one of the first things that really did draw me to Loma Linda. But on top of that, also looking at the community and the different frameworks within each university. For example, Loma Linda really does demonstrate its interdisciplinary framework throughout both its curriculum and also through its international mission services. There are courses where you have to take different exams and things, and with different students, right? Some from epidemiology, others from global health. So you get to meet different individuals, and you really do get to see how you can collaborate with them through all of these projects. So I really did appreciate that, since we know that it's important to include these interdisciplinary opportunities, because at the end of the day, we want to improve patient and population health outcomes. So that's one of the things that really, I think, is important to look at the framework and the different opportunities.
Thank you. I remember Celine saying that Loma Linda, the MPH nutrition program, does not require exposure to the field to be considered. But any of you have done anything to explore the field hands-on? Any activities, any part-time jobs, volunteering, shadowing, anything of that sort? And if yes, did it help? And do you recommend it to students?
I can go ahead and start off with that answer. I actually completed a didactic program in dietetics at Cal Poly Pomona. And during that time, I still wasn't quite sure if dietetics was really the field for me. And I think kind of echoing a lot of what everyone has kind of mentioned about seeking experiences and kind of seeking mentors. And, you know, if you don't know the answer, likely somebody else you know does. And what I had done during my time at Cal Poly was I had applied for a job as a peer health educator. And that was kind of going to be a generic job, you know, taking blood pressure or weighing students who come in who are interested in health. And I took that job mostly so that I could kind of get some experience in nutrition counseling and seeing if I would like that. And that accidentally exposed me to public health, because before that I had no idea this was even a field or a career that people could go into. And at the end of my time there, I realized, I was counseling students on like alcohol education and sexual health and nutrition and stress management. And I realized, like, wow, I really like that one-on-one interaction with people. And it was even more amazing when one of my employers, she was telling me about this whole field of public health that was basically just the culmination of everything I was already doing. So I think kind of stumbling into that field was a blessing in disguise.
Thank you for sharing that. Aletta, you came from a very different background. Would you mind sharing how did you come about to the field of nutrition and dietitian
Yeah,
from investment
absolutely.
banking of all things?
Absolutely. So I fell into that career as, partly because it was the dominant choice of a field from an economics degree, certainly from the university that I was at. But throughout, sometimes, you have hobbies, and then sometimes those hobbies stay hobbies, and sometimes you wonder if those hobbies should become something more than just a hobby. So, I started doing what most people in this stage do. I was running marathons. I was reading a lot. I was researching a lot. I had a good basis of just understanding science. I was really liked statistics. Econometrics was my favorite course back then. So I had, kind of a keen eye for reading research papers, and I enjoyed doing that. And so over time, I found myself becoming this quasi counselor for all of my coworkers who are like, hey, this is what I got for lunch. Like, what do you think about this? And do you think that I should, eat this after my workout? And it was sort of fueling me to learn more and know more, up until it kind of got to that tipping point where I was like, you know what? I come to work, and what I enjoy is actually talking to people about nutrition, and not necessarily creating these decks for corporates to do mergers and acquisitions. Like, it just wasn't, I gradually got to that point where I realized that I needed a change if I wanted to keep being happy and to do something that was fulfilling. So I reached out. I started volunteering with a couple of charities. I volunteered with a charity that engages middle and high school students with nutrition education in the Los Angeles area. And sort of got some exposure to that. I worked with a foundation called Kids Marathon that also engages small children and helps them kind of compete like larger distances, eventually to running a couple miles at a time. And it's a really, really fulfilling area. And then from then on, while I was doing that, I was completing some other prerequisites that I needed for Loma Linda. I'd gotten in touch with the Allied Health Program director pretty early on. And so they were able to kind of advise me and help me on where I could independently acquire the prerequisites that I did not yet have. And, I just self-studied a lot until I was at a point that I was ready to be admitted to the program. And then it just was three great years from that point. So it really was a sort of a different experience for me. But I, even though you started off in a different career, I actually don't regret a single second of it. You learn and you take away from everything that you do. And certainly being in a different career for a while equips you with a skill set that you wouldn't necessarily have in another field. So there are some things that translate pretty well. So it's, a unique path, but I definitely wouldn't trade it for the world.
Thank you so much. So they say hindsight is 20/20, although I hate to use this number now. But what I want to know is that if you look back, what you wished you knew when you started onto this journey? Is there anything that you would like to share with students to look out for to make sure that their journey is as, problem-free, enjoyable as possible?
Yeah, just keep on going along for the ride. Don't have an expectation. Have goals, but realize that those goals can change. Realize that a passion can change. I think oftentimes right out of high school, people are sitting there saying, well, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And you don't really know. Like going back to the previous question, shadow. I mean, that's the best way to realize if it's something that you really want to do as a career. It's one thing to learn material and it's another thing to practice it. So just realize that there are practicing professionals out there that are willing to teach you and use that information, use that knowledge.
Anyone else? Lexi?
I think Nathaniel did a great job as far as his advice. Like, I think definitely I would highly recommend everything he's saying, because he's right. You know, there's that's the best way to get exposure. If there's anything I would add to that, I would just say, like, it's okay to, you know, realize maybe this is what I want to do. Just maybe keep an open mind, thinking, you know what, I love this idea, but I shouldn't, you know, prevent myself from looking at other careers. So you could have a goal in mind in a career you love, just be open to others along the way.
Oh, adding to that, yeah, you, like, even if everyone's telling you not to go into something, if you really enjoy it, just follow your choice, follow what's going to make you happy. I mean, there's a lot of times where students kind of fall into this rut of, oh, so and so told me they didn't like that career choice, so I'm going to follow that. It's like, no, just follow what you want to do, follow what makes you happy. Otherwise you're just going to be miserable, and nobody wants that for anybody.
Anyone else would like to add to that? Katie? You're muted.
Oh, I think I have a little bit of a different perspective in the sense in that some of my friends who came into nutrition who didn't necessarily have a nutrition background, they, you know, it can be a little bit tough if you're not 100% sure set on, you know, becoming a dietitian or a physical therapist or whatever. And I think it's important to, if you're thinking about a career, to really do the research into like the type of, I guess, prerequisites to enter a program or to become this kind of professional, because a lot of my friends did, you know, I don't want to say wasted a few years because they weren't following like the specific prerequisites to enter that specific field, but they did spend a few extra years on classes that they weren't sure about. And of course, experience is still going to be, you know, experience is experience. You're still going to get something away from that. But I think if you're kind of tight on time or tight on money, that's definitely something to be sure that, you know, you're on the right track to make sure you're not wasting, you know, whether it be time or money. So I think if you're interested, you should definitely like really make sure you're looking into that specific program or that specific profession.
Raquel, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I agree with Katie when it comes to, you know, doing that little bit of research, trying to see if you really want to become involved in that. And I think another aspect of that is that if you do have the opportunity of becoming a part of a club, whether that's, you know, a nutrition club or whatever you're interested in, I think that's a great way to kind of become introduced to the different topics within the field. Also, just get introduced to other people that are also interested in the field. That way you kind of get to see the various aspects of the field, whether, you know, that's something as simple as a gardening club in nutrition. You know, you'll get exposure to these different topics, and that might spark an interest in a certain aspect of it. So I would just say get involved also.
Thank you. And one last question that I have is that what inspires you most about your current or future career if you're still in graduate school, and what is something that most concerns you? So the pros and the cons, in a sense.
For physical therapy, well, it's kind of a combination between the two. The pro between the master's and physical therapy. I love my master's program. I love my professors. I love my peers. And they kind of drive me every morning, you know, during every semester, getting up, coming back, to really give that kind of all and then some, for them, for myself, to kind of develop as a whole. So the pros is just finding something that you want to keep on developing in. And I found that with physical therapy as well. I had some accidents when I was younger, and physical therapy got me better. So, I mean, I owe a lot to it, but it's not a debt. It's a fascination, and I guess a debt, but mainly fascination with how it works, how it functions, how the human body functions, and then kind of capitalizing on it with my master's program, learning more besides the surface, learning more besides these exercises, learning the in-depth of exercise physiology, and kind of applying it to the real world, applying it to a career in the future. Negatives are just, you're always going to have uncertainty. Is what you're doing right? Is there another way? Is there another kind of route? So I think the negative is just, I mean, yeah, passion is passion, but you're always going to have this kind of, am I doing it every day? Am I going to be okay? Am I doing the right path? Is this going to stop me? Is this going to keep me going forward? So utilize the advice of your mentors, utilize the advice of your peers, so that they can help you along the road. You're not alone ever.
Thank you. Anyone else?
For nutrition, I think like one of the big pros that I would like to say, and one thing that keeps me motivated and going, is really just the power to impact the health and well-being of so many people. And I think that's that being a professional within this field who actually believes and promotes evidence-based and science-based recommendations and guidelines, I think is incredibly powerful, and we need to be louder than we are. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there, especially in the field of misinformation. There are so many, headline grabbing and like articles and things that don't fully look at the studies that they were looking at, that are just drawing false conclusions and spreading sometimes very dangerous misinformation. And certainly, we're in California where everyone's a nutrition expert at some point in their lives. Unfortunately, there's no licensing for dietitians to give nutrition advice. So it's a very open field for anyone who deems themselves to be a nutrition expert. And I think it's those professionals who truly have the background and the education and the drive to make an impact really have a lot of opportunity, and that's sort of what inspires me is getting the right information out to people and getting people to listen to you. And I guess it's a pro and a con as well. It's sometimes an uphill battle, against the personal trainer next to you that might be telling you something completely different. It's just, we just have to kind of stick to our ground and keep being professionals in our field and excel in the ways that we can. Yeah.
Can I add to that from the kind of professorial perspective of what Aletta's career path is inspiring, because you seem very passionate. The passion that comes out of your sentences is convincing, and sometimes it takes a few false starts. Not that your first start was false by any means. I mean, I'm sure you were successful there, but to find what you really connect with, and that's totally fine. I mean, you see that in every single field. I mean, take sports. I mean, maybe Michael Jordan should have stuck with basketball, maybe, but there's a number of stories. I mean, some of the less famous names, like Seth Kelsey, if anybody knows fencing. I think he's like a 4-time Olympian, at least 3-time Olympian, U.S. fencing. And he tells a story about the reason he took up fencing was he just decided once and for all that I've had enough with baseball. And so he took up fencing and then went to the Olympics at least 3 times. And these failures and false pursuits and even if they're not failures, they're just, you learn something from them. And I think the only amount of time that can be wasted is if you're currently in a coma now. I think that's potentially wasted time. Everything else, you should be able to glean some little profundity from the experience and help either direct where you want to wind up or enhance the course somehow, enhance your experience, your delivery of care if you're going into some practitioner field. But you're going to be, probably everyone here is going to be this career-minded, tax-paying adult for a really long time. the majority of your years, the bulk of your life is going to be spent on the job site. And if that isn't, you're a student for a brief period of time, even if you change your major 6 times, that's such a brief period of time. Now, it may be unwise financially. When I was an undergrad, I was paying for my school as a busser, like a busboy. And people were coming into this restaurant. It was a fancy restaurant, and they were celebrating. They're 70 years old, and they're celebrating their last loan payment from school. And I was baffled that life would be so consumed, banks would be so consumed with undergrad when these people are 70. But they were happy. They were happy with what they were doing. You know, their lives, I'm sure they were happier than I was. I mean, the smiles on their faces were huge. And I think it's important to do what you love, which I think is echoing most of what everyone was saying, of figuring out what gets you out of bed in the morning. If you weren't being paid for it, what would you do? You go to bed excited, you get out of bed leaping. Whatever that activity is, and if it takes 3 false starts to get there, it's still worth it. In my estimation. And so just figuring out what you're most passionate with and getting the breadth of pursuits along the way. And if you attempt an internship or a job and you just hate it, right? Your heart rate is 12 beats higher all day long. The cortisol is just raging. You're sick all the time. That's information, right? And you can put that into your sort of quantification of where you're headed. And so everything, just try to glean a little profundity out of it. And I think everyone can benefit from any situation.
Thank you very much, all of you. I want to be mindful of your time. It's 5:31, so thank you so much for doing this. You were recorded, and there will be other students who would benefit from all the great advice, presentation, information that you all shared with us today. So I really want to thank you for your time, and I will stop the recording.